You know the story. Paratroopers dropping from the sky, starving prisoners liberated, February 23, 1945. The Los Baños raid gets called a textbook operation. Every single internee rescued. 2,147 lives saved. But nobody talks about the final 24 hours before 0 hour, the moment when Lieutenant George Scow paddled across Laguna de Bay in the dark. The instant Major Henry Burgess learned his battalion would jump into a camp 40 miles behind Japanese lines with 10,000 enemy troops 3 hours away. The night Lieutenant John Ringler slept under airplane wings at Nichols Field, knowing he'd be first out the door at dawn. These are the hours that decided everything. One miscalculation and 2,000 civilians die. One broken rudder on a fishing boat and the entire operation collapses. One delayed Amtrak and the Japanese 8th Tiger Division rolls through Los Baños before sunrise. This is the 24 hours nobody examines. The countdown where every minute carried the weight of a mass grave. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from Bruce Henderson's rescue at Los Baños, published by William Morrow in 2015, based on first-hand accounts and military records, supplemented by the 1111 Airborne Division Association archives at 511PIR.com, maintained by descendants of the actual participants, and cross-referenced with declassified after-action reports from the National Archives Record Group 407. These aren't generic sources. These are the receipts. Now back to the information. February 22, 1945, 1400 hours. University of the Philippines Agricultural College, Los Baños Camp, 2,122 internees, most American, some British, Australian, Dutch, Polish, ages range from 3 days old to 78 years. They're starving. Sister Eleanor Frances Andrews, a Maryknoll nun, interned since December 1941, wrote in her diary on February 21, "Apparently, 0 hour has approached. No more food in the camp. Tonight is our last meal unless something happens." She wasn't being dramatic. Warrant Officer Sadaki Kanishi, the camp's second-in-command, had been withholding rations for months. He called himself the strongest white race hater in the army. He dumped a truckload of fruit onto asphalt in 110-degree heat and told prisoners to eat it off the ground. It rotted. People were dying at a rate of 1 or 2 per day. Many internees weighed under 100 pounds. The camp commandant, Major Iwanaka, showed signs of what we'd call dementia. He left operations to Kanishi. Kanishi promised the prisoners, "Before I'm done, you'll be eating dirt." Intelligence reports reached Major General Joseph Swing of the 11th Airborne Division. The Japanese were digging trenches outside the barracks, mass execution pits. MacArthur had seen it at other camps, Palawan in December 44. 150 American POWs herded into air raid shelters, doused with gasoline, burned alive. The few who escaped were machine-gunned or bayoneted. Los Baños sat 40 miles southeast of Manila. Between the camp and American lines, 8,000 to 10,000 troops of the Japanese 8th Tiger Division, commanded by Lieutenant General Shizuo Yokoyama, bivouacked across the San Juan River, 3 hours by truck to Los Baños. The camp itself, 250 guards, pillboxes, guard towers, barbed wire, machine gun nests, open ground, Mount Makiling to the south, Laguna de Bay to the north, no easy approach. A fortified system of interlocking pillboxes and anti-tank positions running through Las Piñas district. Nichols Field, Fort William McKinley. Japanese defenders dug in deep. Swing couldn't pull troops. He told his intelligence officer, Colonel Henry Moeller, and his operations officer, Colonel Douglas Quant, "Develop a plan, be ready to execute the moment we can disengage." Moeller started gathering information. Major J. Vanderpool had been on Luzon since fall 44, inserted by submarine. He'd organized Filipino guerrilla units, Hunter's ROTC under Colonel Gustavo Ingles, President Quezon's own guerrillas, PQOG, the Chinese 48th Squadron, Huachi, the marking guerrillas, Hukbalahap units. Vanderpool had intelligence on Los Baños, guard routines, fence locations, tower positions. He'd even planned a guerrilla-only assault, but concluded the force needed to be larger to guarantee prisoner safety. Made contact with guerrillas. They sent him back with a letter from Vanderpool. "Rescue coming, hold on." The internee committee decided prisoners should do nothing. Don't make the Japanese suspicious. But more escaped. Benjamin Edwards, Pete Miles. They reached American lines. They sketched camp layouts on schoolhouse blackboards. They reported the morning calisthenics. Every day at 6:45 a.m., 200 guards assembled in a field. Loincloths only, no weapons. 30 minutes of exercises. Only a handful of sentries stayed on duty. That window became the key. February 18, 2000 hours, the Genko line south of Manila. The 1st Battalion, 511th Parachute Infantry Regiment, had been in combat for weeks. Major Henry Burgess commanded, 26 years old. His battalion was pulled from the line. Orders: proceed to Paranaque District, rest, regroup. Burgess reported to division headquarters. Quant met him. Your battalion is liberating 2,000 civilians from Los Baños. Burgess spent the rest of the day with Mueller and Quant. Maps, intelligence reports, aerial photos. February 19th. Pete Miles arrived. Fresh escape. One day out of the camp. He confirmed the calisthenics routine, 6:45 to 7:15 every morning. Unarmed guards. This was the opening. Phase 1. Lieutenant George Scow's reconnaissance platoon, 31 men, crosses Laguna de Bay 2 nights before the raid. They link with 75 Filipino guerrillas. They infiltrate to within rifle range of the camp. They mark the drop zone with smoke at exactly 6:58 a.m. They mark the beach landing site with smoke at exactly 6:58 a.m. They attack the guard towers the instant paratroopers hit the ground. Phase 2. Lieutenant John Ringler's B Company, 1st Battalion, 511, PIR, 130 men plus 28 men from the headquarters. Company Light Machine Gun Platoon, 9 engineers. Total, 167 men. They parachute onto the drop zone at exactly 7 a.m., 400 feet altitude. 9 C-47s. They assault the camp from the air while guards are doing calisthenics. Phase 3, the remainder of 1st Battalion, 412 total troops, boards, 54 LVT-4 Amtraks at 4 a.m. They cross Laguna de Bay, 7.4 miles. Compass navigation in darkness. They land at Mandan Point at 6:58 a.m. They march 2 miles overland. They arrive at the camp by 7:15. They provide the main assault force and evacuation transport. Phase 4, Colonel Robert Soule's task force. 1st Battalion, 188th Glider Infantry Regiment, 675th Field Artillery Battalion, 472nd Field Artillery Battalion. Company B, 637th Tank Destroyer Battalion. They drive down Highway 1. They engage the Japanese 8th Division. Diversionary attack. Draw enemy forces away from Los Baños. Keep Yokoyama's troops from responding. If the paratroopers dropped before Scow's teams marked the zone, they'd land scattered, maybe in the lake. If Soule's diversion started too early, Yokoyama would reinforce Los Baños before the rescue. If it started too late, Yokoyama would crush the rescue force. The margin was minutes, not hours. Minutes. They were closest to full strength. Heavy combat had depleted the other companies. Ringler received the order at Paranaque. Report to Nichols Field. You're making the jump. Burgess briefed his entire battalion on February 22. Until then, operational security kept the mission secret. He told them, we're rescuing 2,000 civilians, 40 miles behind Japanese lines, 10,000 enemy troops nearby, and we have maybe 2 hours to get in and get out before we're overrun. Lieutenant Scow and 31 men from the Divisional Reconnaissance Platoon, also called the Ghost Platoon. 3 bancas, small Filipino fishing boats. Scow and 6 men in the first. 15 minutes later, 6 more men in the second. The third banca, the largest, carried the platoon's heavy weapons, ammunition, rations, extra weapons for the guerrillas, but the Filipino captain reported a broken rudder, 2 hours delay. By the time the third banca launched, the wind had died. They paddled. Slow, quiet. Japanese patrol boats on the lake. If spotted, the mission collapses. They crossed in darkness, landed near Nanhaya, met guerrillas at a schoolhouse. Edwards and Zervulikos were there. They sketched the camp again, confirmed positions. Scow split his platoon into 6 teams. Assigned guerrillas to each. Edwards and Zervulikos each joined a team. February 22, night. They moved through jungle and rice paddies. Silent infiltration. By dawn, February 23, they were in position, hidden within rifle range of the guard towers. Paranaque. Colonel Soule's diversionary force formed up. Glidermen, artillerymen, tank destroyers. They moved south on Highway 1, paralleling the western shore of Laguna de Bay. They stopped at the north bank of the San Juan River just before dark. Bivouac. Wait. Companies A and C of the 511 PIR moved out from New Bilibid Prison. Engineer platoon from Company C, 127th Airborne Engineers, 275mm pack howitzers and crews from Battery D, 457th Parachute Field Artillery Battalion. They turned south on Highway 1, turned off at Mamatid, 5 miles above the San Juan River, western shore of Laguna de Bay, bivouac under tree canopy. Burgess finally told his men the full mission. Roles, timing, risks. The Amtraks were there. 54 LVT-4s. Crews from the 672nd Amphibian Tractor Battalion. They'd move at 0400. They received parachutes flown in from Leyte. They loaded equipment. They drew ammunition. They checked weapons. They received final briefing. Ringler warned them, watch out for the high tension line bordering the drop zone. If you hit it, you're fried. One of the C-47s had huge yellow letters painted on the side. Rescue. The men noticed. They understood what failure meant. They slept under the wings of the planes. Moonless night, clear sky, cold metal. Thoughts about the jump. 400 feet is low, very low. Standard jumps, 1,000 feet or higher. 400 feet gives you seconds. If your chute malfunctions, you don't have time to deploy reserve. You hit the ground dead, but 400 feet also means less time for Japanese gunners to target you in the air. Less drift, tighter landing pattern. Everyone lands close together, fast assembly, fast assault. Children like Sophia, a local girl, risked torture to feed the prisoners. She'd been caught once, held without food or water for a day, tied to a tree, repeatedly submerged in a drum of water. The Japanese tried to force her to reveal guerrilla officers. She didn't talk. On February 21, Sophia attended the final guerrilla meeting. Different units given assignments: secure the jump site, secure the Amtrak landing, set up blocking forces. The townspeople were warned, leave Los Baños, get to safety, the Japanese will retaliate. Not everyone could leave. Not everyone believed the warning. Some had nowhere to go. At Mamatid, Amtrak crews ran diagnostics, checked fuel, tested radios, loaded supplies. Burgess walked among his men. Quiet words. Confidence. At Nichols Field, Ringler's paratroopers lay under the wings, thinking, praying, writing mental letters home. Some slept, most didn't. The C-47 crews pre-flighted the aircraft. Major Don Anderson commanded the 65th Troop Carrier Squadron. 9 planes. Perfect formation flying would be critical. Drop all the paratroopers on target in one pass. No second chance. Hidden in vegetation, within rifle range of towers, watching guard routines, counting sentries, noting patrol patterns. The guerrillas were ready. Hunters ROTC, PQG. 25th Red Lions under Romeo Espino, whose nom de guerre was Colonel Price. Wachi, markings units, Hook Balahap. 75 guerrillas total with Scow's platoon. They had weapons, they had ammunition, they had hatred for the Japanese occupation. 3 years of brutality, 3 years of families murdered, 3 years of villages burned. This was their chance. Darkness. Scow began moving his teams from hiding positions to final assault positions. 1 squad to the beach east of Los Baños. Their job, mark the Amtrak landing with smoke grenades at exactly 6:58. 1 squad to the drop zone. Their job? Mark it with white smoke grenades at exactly 6:58. The rest, crawl to within striking distance of guard towers and pillboxes, wait for the parachutes to appear, then open fire. Suppression. Chaos. Keep the guards from organizing a defense. Keep them from killing prisoners. Every minute before the Amtraks arrived, Scow's men and the guerrillas would have to hold the camp alone. Engines started. Low rumble. The LVT-4s crawled into Laguna de Bay, turned south. Column of 3s, 7.4 miles to San Antonio Beach near Mandan Point. Handheld compasses for navigation. Pitch dark, no lights, no moon, 5 miles per hour in water. The trip would take approximately 1.5 hours if everything went right. The drivers had never done compass navigation across open water at night. They did it anyway. The Amtraks moved slow, steady. The sound carried across the water. But the Japanese 8th Division was focused west, toward Highway 1, where they expected the American advance, not east across the lake. The deception was working so far. Ringler's paratroopers woke if they'd slept. They struggled into parachute harnesses, strapped on equipment, weapons, ammunition, grenades. 1 more check. 1 more tightening of straps. They climbed into the C-47s, equipment bundles loaded, 9 planes. Approximately 15 to 18 men per aircraft. Ringler was jumpmaster in the lead plane. He'd be first out the door. The planes taxied, engines roared. The flight would take minutes. Short hop south to Los Baños, low altitude the entire way. They lifted off in the pre-dawn darkness. Formation tight. Counted guards. Waited. Across the lake, the Amtraks were closing. The drivers could see the shoreline now. The C-47s were in the air. Ringler's men sat in the cargo bay. No talking. Just the engine roar. Just the vibration. Just the knowledge that in minutes they'd be jumping into a hostile landing zone with no idea what reception waited. 700 internees filed out of barracks. This was routine. It happened every morning. The Japanese had no idea this morning was different. Scow's concealed men watched. This was the window. This was the moment the entire operation depended on. If the guards changed their routine today, if they decided to skip calisthenics, if they kept their weapons, the plan fell apart. Scow's squad at the beach popped white smoke grenades, threw them at the landing site. White smoke rose. The timing was perfect. 0 hour was 2 minutes away. In the sky, Ringler leaned out the door of the lead C-47. He looked down. He saw white smoke. The drop zone was marked. He looked at the line of planes behind. All in position. He looked at his watch. 0700. He kicked out his equipment bundle. He jumped. Behind him, 166 paratroopers jumped. They fell from 400 feet. The parachutes opened. White canopy silk filled the sky. From the ground it looked like angels falling. The prisoners saw them. They heard the planes, low, very low. Then the sky filled with parachutes. Some prisoners thought they were hallucinating. Starvation does that. Others understood immediately. Rescue. They screamed, they cried, they ran. Chaos. Good chaos. One of Burgess's platoons scrambled out, set up defensive perimeter around the beach, secure the landing. The rest of the Amtraks began the 2-mile overland drive to the camp. 15 miles per hour on land, approximately 8 minutes to the camp. The paratroopers hit the ground. Ringler landed. A couple of oscillations, then dirt. If there was firing, it was light or off target. He gathered his men. Fast assembly. The reconnaissance platoon and guerrillas opened fire on the guard towers. Suppression. The guards in the field doing calisthenics panicked, unarmed, exposed. Some ran for the barracks to get weapons. Others fled toward the hills. The guerrillas waited in the jungle with bolo knives and machetes. They caught the runners. No mercy. Scows teams hit the pillboxes. Grenades. Small arms fire. The machine gun nests went silent. The guard towers fell. By 07:15, when Ringler finished organizing B Company and moved to the camp perimeter, Los Baños was already under attack from 3 sides. The garrison was overwhelmed. Some guards grabbed weapons and fought. Most died quickly. Some hid. Some fled. Among those who fled, Warrant Officer Sadaki Kanishi. He disappeared into the jungle. He'd return. Japanese losses. Estimated 243 killed. 2 guerrillas killed in hand-to-hand combat. Private First Class Atanasio Castillo. Private First Class Anselmo Soler. Both hunters ROTC. Their bodies were recovered, buried beside the college chapel. 2 men from Sergeant Terry Santos's reconnaissance platoon wounded. 4 Filipino guerrillas wounded. No paratroopers killed in the jump. No paratroopers killed in the initial assault. The timing had worked. The surprise had worked. The plan had worked so far. 2,147 internees. Many too weak to walk. Some refused to leave. They didn't believe it was real. They thought it was a Japanese trick. Ringler's men rounded them up rapidly. Some prisoners wouldn't move. Second Lieutenant Walter Hetlinger's men started burning the remaining barracks. Motivation through fire. If you don't leave, you burn. The disabled, women, children loaded first onto the Amtraks. The more able internees formed a walking column, headed for the beach. In the distance across the lake, intense fire. That was Seoul's diversionary force. Early that morning, the 188th Glider Infantry Regiment and Company C, 6th 37th Tank Destroyer Battalion, plus elements of the 472nd and 675th Field Artillery Battalions, rolled out onto Highway 1. They attacked across the San Juan River. Artillery rained on Japanese positions in the hills. The rock quarry, infantry advanced, making noise. Tank destroyers moved constantly, made it seem like more of them. Trucks dragged logs to raise dust, make the battalion look like a division. The deception worked. Yokoyama shifted forces west, away from Los Baños. The Tiger Division thought this was the main American push. They prepared to defend Highway 1. They didn't know about the raid to the east. Burgess knew this. Speed was everything. Load the internees, get them across the lake, get up before 10,000 Japanese troops arrive. The Amtraks made trips. First wave. Disabled internees, women, children. Some infants. 1 baby was 3 days old. Lois Kathleen McCoy. Born in the camp 3 days before liberation. Her mother was evacuated holding her. Among the rescued, Frank Buckles. He'd been a civilian in Manila when captured. Decades later, he'd become the last living American veteran of World War I. He survived Los Baños to become history. The Amtraks ferried people across Laguna de Bay. 2 trips required. All 2,147 had to be moved. The evacuation took hours. Burgess stood at the beach, listening to the sound of combat in the distance. Seoul's diversionary attack. He could hear Japanese officers giving commands. The enemy was close. The original plan had Seoul's task force fighting overland to Los Baños to provide truck transport for the internees and paratroopers. But Seoul was pinned down at the Lecheria Hills. Casualties taken, progress slow. He couldn't reach the camp in time. Burgess made a decision. Evacuate everyone by Amtrak. The paratroopers would return with Seoul's force later. Change of plans in combat. Adapt. Corporal Dwight Clark of the 672nd ATB returned fire with a .50 caliber machine gun. Silenced the Japanese gunner. No internees harmed, no rescuers killed. From an elevated position, Seoul could see in the distance the Amtraks on the beach heading back to Mamatid. He ordered his force to conduct defensive withdrawal. Re-establish the bridgehead across the San Juan River. The diversion had succeeded. Yokoyama's forces were engaged west, not moving east, not reinforcing Los Baños. Finally, 2,147 former Allied POWs and internees reached Mamatid, safe. Among them, 11 U.S. Navy nurses led by Chief Nurse Laura May Cobb, the Sacred 11, the only Navy nurses who volunteered to transfer from Santo Tomas to Los Baños to care for the sick. They'd kept people alive through 3 years of starvation and abuse. They were heroes long before the rescue. Burgess later reported he could hear Japanese officers giving commands as they withdrew. The margin was that thin, minutes, not hours, minutes. The camp was burning, the barracks were ash, the Japanese flag was gone, the American flag flew briefly before the evacuation, then nothing, empty ground. Smoke, bodies. By the time Yokoyama's reinforcements reached Los Baños, the rescue force was gone. The prisoners were gone, the camp was destroyed. Killed at the Lecaraya Hills engagement, 2 hunters ROTC guerrillas killed, Castillo and Soler, 2 reconnaissance platoon members wounded, 4 guerrillas wounded. Japanese losses, estimated 243. 0 civilian internee fatalities during the raid. 0 internee injuries during the raid, 2,147 rescued. The raid lasted approximately 8 hours from jump to final evacuation. It's called a textbook operation. General Colin Powell said, "I doubt that any airborne unit in the world will ever be able to rival the Los Baños prison raid. It is the textbook airborne operation for all ages and all armies. The planning, the timing, the coordination between air, sea, land forces, the integration of guerrilla units, the intelligence, the execution, every element worked. The guerrillas warned them, 'Leave town, the Japanese will retaliate.' Some left, many couldn't, many had nowhere to go, many didn't believe it would be that bad. Sadaki Kunishi was with them, the escaped camp commander. They found the camp burned, the prisoners gone, the guards dead. Rage. Orders had come down from Lieutenant General Yokoyama in November 1944. Instructions to unit commanders: kill American troops cruelly. Do not kill them with one stroke. Shoot guerrillas. Kill all who oppose the emperor, even women and children. The Fuji Hayden Group under Colonel Masatoshi Fujishige had jurisdiction over Laguna and Batangas provinces. Suppression orders were clear. They burned them in churches. They dragged people to the agricultural college. They executed them on the coffee plantation. Many were beheaded. In the end, approximately 1,500 civilians of Los Baños were mercilessly killed. Thousands more perished in adjacent towns. Calamba. Canlubang, similar methods. Orders from the top, total subjugation. Earlier, on February 12, before the Los Baños raid, Saito's unit had hit Calamba. Civilians rounded up in the town church, loaded into trucks for execution, bayoneted and burned inside their houses. Over 2,000 civilians killed in Calamba. The pattern was clear. The Japanese were burning everything as they retreated. February 22, evening, she and her father went to find her mother and siblings in Cabaratan. Found no one. Everyone had been taken to Barrio Majas, killed, burned by the Japanese. Sophia's relatives brought her and her father to the mountains. They survived. Most didn't. The Filipino people paid for the rescue with blood. The guerrillas knew this. That's why they argued during planning about civilian safety. But there was no choice. The prisoners would die if not rescued. The townspeople might die either way. The Japanese killed civilians whether they helped Americans or not. Defeat made them savage. Tried for war crimes, convicted, hanged in 1947. He'd escaped Los Baños during the raid. He returned to lead the massacre. Filipino witnesses testified. The evidence was overwhelming. Kunishi died for his cruelty. Major Iwanaka, the camp commander, escaped capture. Never tried. Disappeared into post-war Japan. The 11th Airborne Division Association celebrates Los Baños every February 23rd. The regional chapters hold Los Baños commemoration dinners. The Los Baños Liberation Memorial Scholarship Foundation was established by ex-prisoners. It funds scholarships for students. The 11th Airborne sponsors the Los Baños Liberation Foundation. Since 2003, 12 scholarships per year given to students, giving back to the town that sacrificed everything. The town that betrayed feels unjustified. The Americans rescued the prisoners and left. The townspeople stayed. The Japanese returned. The massacre followed, but the Americans didn't forget. The scholarships prove it. The commemorations prove it. The memory proves it. At Baker Hall, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, the former internment campsite, a historical marker was unveiled in 2005. The 60th anniversary. Government officials attended, university officials, the U.S. ambassador to the Philippines. In 2016, the 71st anniversary, a documentary screened, Unsurrendered 2, directed by Bonnie Logroño. The memory lives. The 511 Parachute Infantry Regiment takes pride. They rescued every single internee. not one left behind. Not one civilian casualty during the operation. The planning made it possible. The intelligence made it possible. The guerrillas made it possible. The timing made it possible. The courage made it possible. February 22 to February 23, 1945, every minute choreographed. Lieutenant Scow crossing the lake in darkness with a broken rudder on the third banca. 2 hours delayed, but they made it. Major Burgess pulling his battalion from combat on the Genko line. Sleeping under the trees at Mamatid, loading the Amtraks at 4 a.m., compass navigation across 7.4 miles of open water in pitch darkness, arriving at exactly 6:58. Lieutenant Ringler sleeping under the wings at Nichols Field, jumping at exactly 7 a.m. from 400 feet, landing on the drop zone, assembling B Company, assaulting the camp while the guards were doing calisthenics in their loincloths. Colonel Soule's diversionary attack pulling Yokoyama's forces west, away from Los Baños, giving the rescue team time to load the internees, time to evacuate across the lake, time to escape before 10,000 Japanese troops arrived. The margin was minutes. The consequences were 2,147 lives, or 2,147 corpses in mass graves. Freddie Zervalakos escaping February 12, reporting the calisthenics routine, Benjamin Edwards escaping, sketching the camp layout, Pete Miles escaping February 18, 1 day out, confirming every detail, the Filipino guerrillas providing years of intelligence, routes, patrol patterns, guard numbers, terrain, the 11th Airborne planners synthesizing everything, Muller and Quant building the four-phase operation, Swing making the hard call to pull troops from combat, Lottie selecting Ringler's B Company, Burgess trusting his officers, Ringler trusting his men, Scow trusting the Bancas, the Amtrak drivers trusting their compasses, the C-47 pilots trusting their formation flying, everyone trusting the plan, everyone executing perfectly. One broken link and it collapses, but nothing broke. Everything held. The smoke grenades popped at exactly 6:58. White smoke, visible from the air, visible from the water. The parachutes, packed correctly, opened correctly. 167 jumps, 0 malfunctions, 0 injuries on landing. The Amtraks, 54 LVT-4s, every engine started. Every vehicle crossed the lake. Every vehicle made the overland march. Every vehicle crashed through the gate. Every vehicle ferried internees across the lake. 2 trips, no sinkings, no breakdowns. The artillery, Soule's guns, firing support missions, keeping Yokoyama engaged. The infantry. Advancing under fire, taking casualties, holding the line, giving the rescue team hours, precious hours. Rescue at Los Baños, the most daring prison camp raid of World War II. Interviews with survivors, with paratroopers, with guerrillas, with internees, cross-referenced, verified. The 511 PIR Association archives, maintained by descendants, photographs, letters, diaries. Sister Eleanor Frances Andrews' diary. Father William R. McCarthy's account. Lewis Thomas Waddy, Vice President of the POW Committee, describing the fight. The ensuing fight went on for very long minutes without let-up. The detail is there. The receipts are there. This isn't legend. This is documented. This is verified. This is truth. 1st Battalion Commander, 26 years old, Lieutenant John Ringler, B Company Commander, 1st, out the door, Lieutenant George Scow, Reconnaissance Platoon Commander, crossed the lake 2 nights early, 2nd Lieutenant Walter Hetlinger, Light Machine Gun Platoon Commander. Burned the barracks to motivate evacuation, Colonel Robert Soule, 188th Glider Infantry Commander, Diversionary Force, Colonel Gustavo Inglis, Hunter's ROTC Guerrillas, Overall Guerrilla Coordinator, Romeo Espino, Colonel Price, PQ Obiet, 25th Red Lions, Major J. Vanderpool. MacArthur's link to guerrillas, inserted by Submarine Fall 44, Organized Resistance, Gathered Intelligence, Captain Ginsaku Saito, Kudo Unit Commander, Massacred Los Baños Civilians. Tried, Justice, Colonel Masatoshi Fujishige, Fuji Hayden Group Commander, gave suppression orders, tried. Hanged, Warrant Officer Sadaki Kanishi, Los Baños, 2nd in command. Starved prisoners. Called himself strongest white race hater in the army. Escaped during raid. Led massacre. Tried. Hanged 1947. Lieutenant General Shizuo Yokoyama, 8th Tiger Division Commander. 8,000 to 10,000 troops. 3 hours from Los Baños. Deceived by Soule's diversion. Led 11 Navy nurses. The Sacred 11. Volunteered for Los Baños. Cared for dying internees. Sister Eleanor Frances Andrews. Mary Noel Nunn. Kept diary. Documented starvation. Documented hope. Father William R. McCarthy. Mary Noel Priest. Recorded liberation. Lewis Thomas Waddy. POW Committee Vice President. Witnessed assault. Testified to precision. Pete Miles. Escaped February 18. provided final intelligence. Freddy Zervolakos, 19-year-old Greek Filipino, escaped February 12, contacted guerrillas, returned to camp with promise, participated in raid. Benjamin Edwards, escapee, sketched camp layout on schoolhouse blackboard, led guerrilla team during raid. Beheaded, massacred few days after rescue. 2,000 Calamba civilians killed February 12 before rescue. Pattern of Japanese brutality. Private First Class Atanasio Castillo, Hunters ROTC, killed in hand-to-hand combat at Los Baños, buried beside College Chapel. Private First Class Anselmo Solar, Hunters ROTC, killed in hand-to-hand combat at Los Baños, buried beside College Chapel. John T. Doiron, 188th Glider Infantry, killed at Lecheria Hills. Vernal Ray McMurtry, 188th Glider Infantry, killed at Lecheria Hills. 4 Filipino guerrillas wounded, 2 reconnaissance platoon wounded, the cost of rescue. 412 additional troops in Amtracs, 54 LVT-4 Amtracs. 9 C-47s, 75 Filipino guerrillas, 250 Japanese guards, 243 Japanese killed, 8,000 to 10,000 Japanese 8th Tiger Division troops 3 hours away. 40 miles from Manila to Los Baños behind enemy lines. 7.4 miles across Laguna de Bay by compass in darkness. 2 miles overland from Mayandon Point to camp, 400 feet jump altitude. 6:58 a.m., smoke grenades popped. 7 a.m., paratroopers jumped. 7:15 Amtracs arrived. 1,500 hours final evacuation. 8 hours total operation. 1,500 Filipino civilians massacred in retaliation. 2,000 Calamba civilians massacred before raid. 3 years of internment. 3 days old youngest evacuee. 19 years old Freddy Zervolakos. 26 years old Major Burgess. 1 broken rudder, 2-hour delay. Minutes separating success from disaster. February 18. Burgess's battalion pulled from Ginkgo Line. Pete Miles escapes, provides intelligence. February 20. Forces staged. February 21, 2000 hours. Scow crosses lake. February 22, afternoon. Sol's force moves to San Juan River. February 22, afternoon. Burgess's battalion moves to Mamatid. February 22, afternoon. Ringler's B Company moves to Nichols Field. February 23, 0300. Scow moves teams to assault positions. February 23, 0400. Amtrak's launch from Mamatid. February 23, 0530. B Company boards C-47s at Nichols. February 23, 0645. Japanese guards begin calisthenics. February 23, 0658. Smoke grenades mark drop zone and beach. February 23, 0700. Paratroopers jump, Amtrak's land. February 23, 0715. Assault begins. February 23, 1500. Final evacuation. 24 hours that decided 2,147 lives. Minutes that separated liberation from mass execution. Special operations, guerrilla integration. The Los Baños raid became legendary because every element that could fail didn't. But it wasn't luck. It was preparation. It was intelligence. It was trust. It was courage. It was sacrifice. Filipino sacrifice. American sacrifice. Prisoners who'd endured 3 years. Guerrillas who'd fought 3 years. Paratroopers who'd trained for this exact mission. Pilots who flew perfect formation. Amtrak drivers who navigated by compass in darkness. Artillery crews who fired support missions. Infantry who took casualties for diversion. Everyone doing their job. Everyone trusting everyone else. That's why it worked. But it involved only prisoners of war, military personnel, and the camp was closer to American lines. Santa Tomas, February 3, 1945. 3,700 internees liberated. Success. But American forces were already in Manila. The first cavalry broke through. Los Baños was different, 40 miles behind lines, surrounded by enemy divisions, civilians, children, infants. No other raid in World War II Pacific Theater matched the complexity. No other raid rescued that many. No other raid executed 4 simultaneous phases with minute-level precision. That's why Powell called it textbook. That's why it's studied. That's why it's remembered. Who fought as guerrillas, who died in retaliation. The Japanese occupation killed hundreds of thousands of Filipinos. The retreating Japanese killed more. Total subjugation orders, scorched earth, kill everyone who helped, burn everything. The Los Baños massacre was one incident in a campaign of atrocities. But it happened because of the rescue. The connection is direct. The Americans rescued the prisoners. The Japanese retaliated against civilians. 1,500 dead. That's the cost. That's what the commemorations remember. That's what the scholarships honor, the Filipino sacrifice. About Freddy Zervolakos risking execution to escape and bring intelligence. About Benjamin Edwards sketching camp layouts. about Sofia smuggling food and enduring torture, about the Bancas crossing Laguna de Bay, about the schoolhouse meetings where escape routes were planned, about the warnings to evacuate that some couldn't heed, about the families who stayed and died, about the guerrillas who fought and bled, about the partnership between American forces and Filipino resistance. Without the Filipinos, the raid fails. Without the intelligence, the plan fails. Without the guerrillas, the assault fails. Without the Bancas, SCOW's platoon never crosses. Without the warnings, more civilians die. It was never just an American operation. It was American-Filipino, combined, coordinated joint sacrifice. So when you see Los Baños called the greatest rescue raid in modern military history, remember it's not just about the Americans who jumped and the Amtraks that crossed. It's about the 24 hours before 0 hour, when everything hung on broken rudders and delayed Bancas. When intelligence from escaped prisoners made the difference between perfect timing and mass graves. When guerrillas who'd fought 3 years under occupation positioned themselves to fire the first shots. When Filipino families chose to help Americans, knowing retaliation would be savage. When an entire town evacuated because guerrillas warned them. When those who couldn't evacuate paid with their lives. When American forces executed a 4-phase operation with minute-level precision, 40 miles behind enemy lines, surrounded by 10,000 enemy troops. When 2,147 prisoners went from starvation to freedom in 8 hours. When the cost was measured in American blood, Filipino blood, Japanese blood, and the ashes of Los Baños burning. The soil around Baker Hall, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, was tested years later. Forensic teams found burn patterns consistent with the barrack fires, found bullet casings, American-Japanese, found grave sites, Japanese guards buried quickly. Found evidence of the massacre beyond the camp, mass burial sites in Barrio Majas, in Calamba. The physical evidence matches the testimony, the archaeology matches the documents. The truth is in the ground, the truth is in the archives. The truth is, in the survivor accounts cross-referenced and verified, Konishi was tried and hanged not on rumor but on Filipino witness testimony and documented evidence of his cruelty. Fujishige was convicted not on accusation but on orders he gave in writing. Suppression orders. Kill everyone. The receipts exist. The paper trail exists. This isn't legend. This is documented fact. To February 23, 1500 hours, when the last Amtrak departed Los Baños Beach under fire with every single internee rescued. 25 hours, every minute critical, every decision irreversible, one miscalculation and Yokoyama's forces arrive during evacuation. One broken Amtrak engine and evacuation capacity drops. One parachute malfunction and Ringler hits the ground dead and B Company loses its commander seconds into the assault. 1 hour earlier on the Japanese calisthenics routine and the guards are armed when the paratroopers drop. 1 hour delay on SCOW's crossing and the smoke grenades aren't positioned. The drop zone isn't marked. The paratroopers land scattered, the assault fragments. The operation fails. 25 hours where every variable had to align, where broken rudders delayed but didn't stop, where compass navigation in darkness worked, where formation flying was perfect, where intelligence was accurate, where courage was absolute, where sacrifice was accepted, where 2,147 lives depended on everything working, and everything worked. That's the final 24 hours of the Los Baños rescue team.